Welcome to the Earthworks Podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hello all and welcome to the Earthworks Podcast. I'm your host, Jack Higgins. I'm real excited to have Mr. Alan Reed from FC Dallas down there in Texas. Alan, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for coming on. This is real exciting. It's really cool to have a professional stadium groundskeeper on the Earthworks Podcast, and I'm excited to get into the full talk here. So set the scene for us, the listener, Alan. You're down there. Where is the stadium located? Is it in Dallas or Fort Worth or where?
No, we are in Frisco, which is probably about 30 minutes north of Dallas.
Okay, Frisco. Now,
yes.
The FC Dallas has been talked about at Earthworks for many years, and a lot of it is because there's just so much action there. There's so much activity. Kind of let us know, because the stadium is not the only thing that FC Dallas has in terms of fields. So kind of give us the breakdown as to what's going on.
Okay, so here in Frisco, we have the stadium field, and we have an 18 field complex here. Basically, that includes the stadium. So we have the stadium field, and then there's 17 fields just right outside the stadium on a complex. One of those fields is the first team's training field. So I'm over the stadium field and the first team's training field. And then another gentleman, Miles Studhalter, is over the rest of the complex fields here at Toyota Stadium, Toyota Soccer Center. And
okay.
3 of those fields are artificial. The rest are natural grass. And then we manage a complex closer down into Dallas, which Troy Crawford manages that complex. And that's just another complex that we have. And I'm not for sure exactly how many fields are there, close to what we have here.
Okay, so yeah, probably another 18 or so.
Yeah, something like that. Yes.
And Troy's been on the Earthworks Podcast before, actually, a year ago or so. So now, who uses all of these facilities? Who does this serve? Obviously, there's a Major League Soccer team, FC Dallas.
So in the stadium, we do Major League Soccer. We do some youth soccer tournaments, some international soccer tournaments. We'll host high school football. City of Frisco, the school district of Frisco, has 11 high schools, I believe, and we are one of the host stadiums for their high school football games on Thursday and Friday nights.
Wow.
Yes.
So 11 high schools in one school district.
They have 11 high schools, and the reasoning on that is they like to keep the numbers down in the school. So they roughly have about 2,000 kids per high school.
Okay, so graduating classes of 500. So
yeah, roughly.
So if you want to play football, for example, you can get on the team. You're not like competing against like 5,000 other kids.
Correct. Yes, and they have some very good athletes. So we host some high school football, and then we do some concerts throughout the year. We haven't done anything here recently, but we're normally doing 3 to 4 concerts a year.
Okay, concerts. Any other extracurricular events that pull your hair out?
I try not to, try not to let any of it pull my hair out, but it all depends on weather. We do some college football games in the fall. Frisco Bowl is a Division I bowl. We host that. We've done that, I think, the last 3 or 4 years now. And then we do the FCS National Championship in January. So that's always a stressful time, just because December, January, and really nothing's growing. So the stronger we can go into one, the better we can be for both. But
because there might be a misconception, but even your cool season grass in Dallas kind of takes a break in the dead of winter.
Yes, yeah. So basically, December, January, and February, we can be warm. You can have your air conditioner on Christmas Day sometimes, but for the most part, we do get pretty cool and really not much growth or activity December, January, and February. So we're green, we're not dormant, but we're just not doing anything. We're not growing.
All right. Well, we'll get
So,
more into turf in a
yeah.
bit, but I still have more questions about, these 18 other fields or 16 other fields at your facility, but then another 18 fields down at Troy's facility. Who's using these fields?
So our academy program, I'm not sure how many kids, our academy teams, they train on these fields pretty much nightly. And we don't even have enough fields just for that. There's sometimes 2 to 4 teams training on one field each night. So they get a quarter of the field each or a half field each. So a lot of times they squeeze them in, when they can. And that's multiple time slots throughout the evening.
And what is academy? Youth?
It's youth, anywhere, kids start playing in our FC Dallas program, as young as, I don't know if it's 5 or 8 or whatever it is, but they actually can work their way up through our program, sign on with the academy once they get of age. I think 12 is when they can sign on to the academy, and then you can actually can sign a contract with the first team as you get older and progress in your career.
Holy cow. Yeah, so it's a built-in farm system.
Yeah, it's basically a minor league system built in. Yes.
Now, do they compete with other Major League Soccer clubs around
yes,
the country?
So there's a whole academy
league
system league. Yeah, and they're playing games constantly. I think their season runs from starts in July and runs through the next May or so.
Okay, wow.
Kind of with the school year.
Wow, yeah, exactly. What is what's the first team season? What's the Major League Soccer season? It seems to be that they play all the time.
We are playing all the time. Basically, this year we started a little bit later, but normal years we'll start 1st of March, sometimes the end of February. Just depends on how the calendar falls, and then we'll run regular season through the end of October, and then playoffs into November, and then that first weekend normally of December is when MLS Cup is.
Okay, interesting. Yeah,
So December, January break, and then they come back for training camp mid-January into January. So yeah,
I guess it kind of fits with the growing season in most of the country.
Mm-hmm.
But still, there's a lot of that shoulder season where I imagine a lot of stadiums out there are struggling to get turf moving in early March, or if you're in the playoffs and it's near Christmas and you've got to grow a field in. It's got to be difficult.
Yes, yeah, especially this year, the way our winter was.
Oh yeah. You guys had like record freezing temperatures for extended periods of time. You had that whole freeze over. Everyone lost power. How did you do through that?
We grass wise, we did really well.
Okay.
There were a couple of areas on our training field that kind of corners and some ends that took a ding, but they all grew back eventually.
Well, what is the turf type that we're talking about there?
So our stadium field is latitude 36. The complex and training field is 419.
Okay. How old is the 419? Is that we're going to get into this. I'm curious as to how often fields turn over, but I imagine that there's a different schedule depending on whether it's a premier field or if it's just a outside training field. So how old's that 419, for example?
The training field is original from 16 years ago.
Wow.
The only thing we've done on that field is we've replaced a couple of the goal mouth areas with some latitude, just because it holds up better for us out there. But other than that field hasn't been resodded since we opened up in 2005.
And that's the first teams. That's the Major League teams training facility. And I imagine for all the other fields at that campus that they're all original 419 fields as well. Then
they're all 419. Some of the middles have been replaced. The north fields, we actually shut them down about year 2 or 3 and re-sprigged those. We just got in some contracts, and there was a lot of play at the very beginning, and it was one of those deals where they played, and our management practices at the time weren't or aren't what they are now, and so we got behind, and the play we just had to shut it down and do some work out there.
The fields were still immature; they were juvenile.
Yeah, they were still brand new. So
that's the sort of situation where like the field isn't quite ready, but there's so much eagerness to get out and use it that you beat it up while it's still young. Okay, well, let's get a little bit of background into you, Alan. You're telling me history about the facility 16 years ago, and it sounds like you've been there a long time. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. So my first day with FC Dallas is when we laid grass in the stadium back in May of 2005.
Wow.
On the original field.
Wow, yeah, long time employee, original employee.
And I actually worked with the field contractor helping build the fields for the previous 6 weeks. I knew them, so I graduated from Texas A&M, got a turf degree from Texas A&M in December of 2004.
Okay.
Started with FC Dallas that spring, May of 2005. Wow. So I knew I was starting, and of course with construction, everything just kind of gets pushed and pushed and pushed, and I knew the field contractors from my time at A&M. He's like, hey, you're not starting with FC Dallas till we get done, so why don't you come work with us? And you've already moved to Frisco, so if you want to do some work, let's get you with us. And so I actually built the stadium field, the training field, and probably 3 or 4 of the complex fields from the ground up before we laid grass in the stadium, and I could start with FC Dallas.
Well, that's real interesting. I mean, and it's kind of a story that I think a lot of turf guys could relate to, that it's really about the networking and meeting the right people at the right time. And, I think the universities sometimes get a bad rap for different things, but they are very good for introducing the students to the industry, to the business.
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny you say it's networking, and it's really about it's who you know. Through A&M. That's why I have my job here where I'm at today.
Is your alma mater?
Yeah, and I worked with Leo and Craig at A&M.
Okay, they're the grounds crew, the grounds
on the athletic
there?
Field staff.
Okay.
On the athletic field staff there at A&M. And the reason not the reason I got the job, but one thing that helped me probably get the job is Leo mowed my uncle's yard when Leo was growing up. And so my uncle knew Leo. And when he found out I was going to A&M to do turf, he goes, well, I know the guy that takes care of Kyle Field. I was like, really? He goes, you want a job? I said, absolutely. So I walked in with my interview with Leo, and he goes, oh, you're such and such's nephew or what? I said, yes, sir. He's like, all right. He goes, when can you start?
Oh, wow.
Tomorrow.
Well, so what's the geography there? Where is A&M compared to where you live? And did you grow? It sounds like you might have grown up in that part of Texas, or what?
So I'm originally from East Texas. So you've got the Dallas-Fort Worth area is kind of North Texas.
Yeah.
East Texas is, I grew up about 3 hours east of where I am now. And then College Station is south of Dallas-Fort Worth, about 3.5 hours.
Oh, so I guess it was really just your uncle that lived in that area.
He lived out in Houston. Yes, he lived out in Houston. So,
oh, cool, man. Yeah, talk about knowing the right people.
Yep.
That's great. Now, you also mentioned to me that turf was not your original plan, because we were talking before the interview started and saying, like, could you imagine what else we'd be doing if we weren't all doing this turf business deal? So tell us about your history. You didn't start out at this.
No, I didn't. And I grew up, I'm a farm boy from East Texas, grew up doing, farming, FFA. I actually mowed yards in high school for just, some money, and actually made a lot of money doing it.
Yeah, cutting grass, man.
Yes. And knew, and I had a love for sports. I played pretty much anything and everything growing up, and going to school. I started off as a sports medicine major, and was gonna do athletic training just because I wanted to be around sports. I wasn't good enough to do anything after high school, And so, but I knew I wanted to be around it.
What sports did you play though? Just a quick question. In high school,
I played baseball, golf, and football.
Oh, excellent. Yeah.
So I was better at golf than any of them. So,
yeah, good. Good.
Which is good now, because then you get invited to the company tournaments and the foursomes, and so get out of work a little bit to do that.
And that's a sport you can play for your entire life. You're not,
yeah, absolutely.
You're not going to be 75 hitting the football field.
No.
Okay, so I interrupted, but anyway, you started out in sports medicine.
Started off sports medicine, trying to be going to do athletic training, and had applied to work on one of the athletic teams, the sports, just help out with athletes while going to school. Didn't get that, and I was like, oh, well, maybe this isn't for me. And it was actually my mom. This was back in 2002, before you could just Google anything. And my mom was like, hey, there's a degree where you can take care of golf courses. I go, really? And she goes, yeah. So I started looking it up, and sorry about that. I got a phone call. Did that mess anything up?
No, you're all good.
Okay.
You're all good.
She goes, yeah. So I started looking that up, and sure enough, my love of golf and mowing and what I'd done growing up farming. So I got to looking into that, and then I actually worked at a golf course one summer at A&M, and just really didn't like the golf side of it. I don't know what it was. I love playing golf, but then fell into that job with the athletic field staff at A&M, and
okay,
haven't left sports since.
That was going to be a follow-up question of mine. If you had ever done any turf work outside of the sports industry, and it sounds like you did a summer in golf.
Yeah, and maybe it was just because I was new to it. That was my first job, outside of mowing yards in turf, and maybe it was just I was new, or I was just summer help, or I don't know. But maybe it was. I think it was a private club there in Bryan. I don't know what it was. I just didn't enjoy it like I do the sports side.
Yeah. So. And then was it then that fall that you started with the athletic crew?
It was that fall.
Crew? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I worked for the Beaver Stadium crew.
Okay.
I started with Bob Hudzik. And then while I was there, Bob sort of stepped back, and Herb Combs came in, and Herb is still there right now. But it's a fun thing working on the athletic field crew while you're in school.
It is.
Because like you go to class, and then you're like, oh, I got, I'm on the schedule. I can get like 2-3 hours of work in. You bounce over there, you get your work, and you might have another class in the afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it was great. They were very, flexible with our works. They had the full-time guys, but then the student workers just kind of come in and work when they can.
Yeah, and you get to drive around Workman's around campus and honk at everybody.
Yeah, and you have your other coworkers drop you off at class. You never really walk anywhere.
It's the
best. Yep.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, we had the same experience.
Yeah.
So now, did you work game days, football game days and everything?
All of them. Yeah. I was actually talking to somebody about that the other day. I was like, I was never really, because they were talking about A&M and the students standing up the whole entire game and this and that. I was like, I'd never really experienced that as a student, because I was always working.
Yeah.
And
I did too. But I did not work game days senior year for that reason.
Okay.
Yeah, I got into I just didn't schedule myself for game days, and got in the student section.
Yeah. I told my boss, I said, my last football game there at A&M my senior year, I was like, I would like this weekend off. I said, I've never been a student. I've never tailgated. I've never done this or that. He goes, no, absolutely, take off. So that was the only one I didn't work, was the last game of my senior year.
Well, that's good. Yeah, you got to have it.
So, yeah.
So when was it that you had this conversation with the field construction folks? And, I get, was that you said you graduated in December. So,
I graduated in December, and they probably reached out to me sometime end of January, maybe 1st of February.
Wow.
When they were getting ready to start on the fields. So
okay.
I was really here for just about their first day of doing stuff. So
now so let's talk about the field construction. It's so awesome that you were there right when it started. Standard sand root zone, internal drainage, gravel layer, all that stuff.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
You got your pea gravel, you got your 12 inches of USGA sand. I think we did a 85-15 mix with peat moss.
Mm-hmm.
So
now calcareous sand there. I was kind of reviewing the soil test before we got started talking, and it looks like some of the sites, you've got some sites that are labeled north and south, and maybe the north looked like it was calcareous sand and the south wasn't.
So our north fields are a finer sand. The north fields are sand capped.
Okay. So, and this is out on the training facility.
On the training on the complex, yes.
Yeah.
And where our south fields are all the USGA sand-based fields. So the stadium and 6 of the complex fields are USGA sand-based fields.
Okay.
So they're the coarser sand than we have on our northern complex, or north fields of the complex.
Interesting. Yeah. So they behave a little bit differently, I imagine.
They do. Yes.
All right.
So
tell us about it, because also, also reviewing the soil test, and I knew this, that you've got an enormous amount of sodium pressure.
Yes.
Well, let's get into that. So, where does that come from? What's going on?
So we have a well that feeds our irrigation ponds, and then we pump out of those ponds to irrigate all of our fields. So it's just the well we're on here, and it's not the best water to be pulling out of, but I've been told it's hit or miss on the pockets. Depends on whether the well gets put in, and we're just in one of those little bad pockets here. And I've been told it's the worst water sample anybody's seen.
It's crazy. I mean, yeah, you've got like, I think upwards of more than 1,000 parts per million of total salt concentration. It's all dominated by sodium. Mm-hmm. And then you see it on the soil test as well. Like the sodium levels come out on the paste test on the north side, where you said it was tighter. I'm looking at 48 parts per million of sodium from this past September. And on the south side, 34 parts per million, where it's a little coarser. Mm-hmm. In spite of that, you grow beautiful fields that function the right way, that play the right way.
Yeah. Somehow we do.
Yeah, somehow you do. Now let's start with watering practices. What do you consider as you're watering, knowing that the water source is no good, but you're still having 110-degree days in Frisco, Texas?
So how we manage the stadium and the first team training field is we use a pogo, and we're mapping every day, every other day. And so we kind of have a range of where we want to be. And so our stadium field, if we're around 20-25% moisture, that's kind of where we like to keep that. Our training field, it's a little higher. It's closer to 30, just because it's 16 years old and has never been renovated. So it does hold a little bit more moisture there.
Right. But it'll play the same way at 30%
it'll
moisture.
Play. Yes. It'll play the same way.
Okay. So, yeah. And is it, you think that it's just more organic matter?
It is. Yes.
Yeah.
It definitely has. So our stadium, and we could get into this later, but we renovate our stadium every year.
Okay.
So we just don't get the organic buildup. So we basically strip out the year's worth and then come back fresh with sod every year.
Okay. Yeah. So we can get into that, but more about watering. So you managed to keep it at that, at that 20-25% on the stadium, upwards of 30 outside, and you're not seeing, are you seeing effects of the sodium in that?
Not really, just because of our management practices and our fertility inputs and our watering surfactants and whatnot, because we use a surfactant that doesn't hold the moisture, but kind of helps us pull the water through the profile, and that in a combination of fertility and those inputs, we
keeping
seem
channels
to
open,
keep it
making
to keep
sure
it
that you
pushed
get
through.
down to that
Mhm.
internal drainage, everything like that.
Yeah.
And then,
Sta-
I mean, this certainly isn't, you use some earthworks for sure. You get,
yes, yeah.
so how does that work for you? And what do you see out of it? In terms of these contaminants?
So we're on the 555 program.
Mm-hmm.
We're spraying that every other week, every 14 days or so. But in conjunction with that, we're spraying BioVantage and Kick Rinse
On the
so,
opposite weeks.
On opposite weeks, and so we use Kick just about all year round. We used to just use it in the summertime, just flush. Now we're using it, just as a maintenance tool. Every 2 weeks, we'll spray the what is it? We use 2 jugs, so that's 6 ounces, 5 to 6 ounces every 2 weeks, and so that's really been beneficial. We don't see the stunning or the yellowing maybe of the salinity and the sodium in the summertime. Just being able to use it all year round.
Now, had there been times, you've been there a long time, and in the first couple of years, I don't think that there was any earthworks distribution in the area. There was no. So had there been times where you'd struggle with this water source?
We would, yeah. Basically in the summertime, July, August, our grass would just shut down. And we would be like, okay, well, it's 100 degrees. There's a point, we thought, when it gets too hot, the grass just isn't going to do anything. Well, I really factor that in or contribute that to our water and just having to keep it so wet. And we weren't measuring moisture. We weren't, there's a lot we weren't doing 10 years ago that, 15 years ago that we started doing the last 5 years.
It is amazing how far we've come in this short period of time, and like you say, like the last 5 years, really.
Yeah.
In terms of quantifying all of that data, that's something that our mutual buddy Jared Minnick is really into.
Yeah, we're very data driven here. We don't do anything that we can't, see the numbers or and now we're seeing, we're applying everything that we're getting from the numbers, and we're just better. We're just better off.
Yeah, it's excellent. So, wow, you really, fields really would just shut down in the middle of the summer when, I mean, you're just evaporating so much of that, so much moisture, rather so much H2O is evaporating out, but the contaminants stay. And you would just see that kind of salt build up in the profile, and it would yellow out your turf, and you just wouldn't see any growth.
Yeah, no, and you could see it on some of we have some decomposed granite walking trails, and you'd see the salt build up and the white ring anywhere moisture would hold after an irrigation cycle. Areas that don't drain or common areas like that, you see the white build up.
Yeah, the talc that would just build up, and so that's something you could visually see, but the way that that's building up in the soil, you can't visually see it, but you see the effects of it. Yeah, so the earthworks products, particularly the liquids that you can use very consistently like that, and even on the 555, which is more of a foliar spoon feeding program, but it's loaded up with these big carbon compounds, with these big kind of complexing humic acids and big organics that wrap up. They're amphiphilic is the term there, where they have negative and positive polarity, and they're able to wrap up contaminants, bicarbonates as well, and really stop the ill effects of that on the plant. So yeah, it's cool that you get to see that, and certainly no one's got the kind of pressure that you're dealing with there.
Yeah.
And Troy as well at the other facility, he kind of has similar pressure to that, or his water's not as bad.
I believe they're on city water, but their fields were not constructed correctly from the get-go. Over the past few years, they've started renovating fields and getting them built more correctly.
Right.
And so his is
more of a construction thing.
Yeah, he's battling construction and just just they were sand capped, but they threw nice hard black gumbo clay sod on top of some decent sand, and so it just the roots don't grow out of that clay.
No, they don't.
No.
And it just shears. Then it just shears at that point. Yeah. All right. So you brought up sodding and we kind of talked a little bit about the regular annual schedule of the stadium field. You say that field gets sodded out every year. So how does that work? And when does it happen? And what does the typical cycle look like for you?
So our plan, we grow latitude 36 per meter grass here, but in the fall we start overseeding. We put out some overseed last week. And normally with our fall high school football schedule, depending on weather and play and how many games they do, we throw out some ryegrass a little bit here and there every week or so, depending on how the field's holding up. And then we've got the football games December, January, and then our season will start in March. And so there's times we just throw ryegrass and on top of ryegrass just to have something out there.
Mm-hmm.
And so with season running from March to November, there's no real time for kind of a natural transition without going through, a couple of games where it's, not that great.
Mm-hmm.
And at this level, you can't do that. So probably I'd say 4 or 5 years ago, we started where we wouldn't worry about our overseed. We wouldn't, didn't matter how much we threw out there. We just needed a good field in the fall and a good field in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were just throwing ryegrass, and then knowing end of May, 1st of June, we'd come in, strip that field out, and then go back in with just straight Bermuda grass and get us through June all the way up until probably October-ish. And then we'd just start throwing ryegrass again. And
okay. So you say strip the field out. Let's talk about the sod. Where does it come from? What is the profile that's grown into? You mentioned, like you can't put a gumbo clay on top of a sand profile. Right. So how do you get around this issue?
It's a sod that comes from Austin. It's just the natural field they have down there. It's about an 85% sand.
Okay.
It's a little bit finer than what we have here, but I get those guys to cut it, half inch or less, so we don't get much layering there.
Mm-hmm.
And over the last 5 years, I think we've resodded the field about, I'd say 6 years. I'd say we've done 3 fields over the last 6 years. There's been a couple of years in there where we haven't had to, just because of maybe for some reason our high school football wasn't as heavy in the fall, or like last year, everything had shut down. So we naturally transitioned, but their sod matches up. I mean, it's not great soil. I mean, it's a great soil because it drains for us. It doesn't match up to our sand base.
Right.
But it works for us. And
it's not like putting clay on top of.
No, it's not clay. No,
yeah.
It is a sand. It is a sand. It's just a little bit finer. So.
And I guess you also have the benefit of the time of year and the latitude 36 growth type that you can cut it real thin, and you'll be able to push that thing and get it to root pretty quickly.
Right. Yeah. So what we'll do, we'll come in, got a guy that comes in with his Coro, and he'll just strip the field. So we're level at that point. If we get the we get the machine dialed in to the depth that we want it, we'll stay at our grade.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'll come in, we'll strip out anywhere from 1/2 to 3/4 of an inch, and not touch the root
zone.
profile.
Right.
And so it's firm as it is. And so then we'll just come in and put some Earthworks products on it, put some Renovate and some Myco, replenish and lay the sod. And normally we've got about a 3-week window to do all that. So we try to get
the teams away, I guess.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of a break there, maybe a FIFA window in there, and then maybe we've gotten with the league to where we can block out either on the front side or the back side of that break to where we can get 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll have about 20 days to grow in a field, and that sounds crazy to some people, but we do it, and knock on wood, we haven't had any issues doing it in June. So it's with the way the latitude grows and using our pre-plant that we do,
It works for you.
It works great. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And then they're playing on the latitude up until this time of year, like October, when you're overseeding some more rye.
Yeah,
And of course, they're
overseed.
always playing on the Bermuda grass, really.
Yes.
Let's talk about footing and everything. Like you consider that, because really your pitch is really, any time of year, your pitch is really that where they're putting their cleats into, and that's into the stolons and that lateral growth of the Bermuda.
Yeah, that Bermuda grass gives us a great stability in the fall, especially when we start putting ryegrass out, and even through, our January or February play. Yeah, that Bermuda grass makes a great base. Even in dormancy, that latitude works out really well for us as a base. Just to get that ryegrass to root into something at the very beginning, and then it just holds really well for us. And now when we resod, there's never any footing issues, but it does take us a good 4 to 6 weeks to get it playing like we like it.
Sure.
To where it's nice and tight and clean. And so we're constantly doing stuff to help the footing and help it play better.
I want to transition a little bit here and talk about more kind of game day prep. You mentioned this is a perfect time of year that you have football and you have soccer season concurrent, and you might be prepping the field for both, or prepping the stadium for both of those fields. How does that work? You say you have a football Thursday and Friday night, but you have an MLS game the following, I don't know, maybe Sunday or the following week.
Yeah, sometimes it's Thursday, Friday football, and Saturday soccer.
Oh my gosh.
This week's not. This week's just this high school football Friday night. Next week we'll go Wednesday soccer into Friday football. So it flips the other way as well. But as far as grass height and management on the field, we keep that the same. I would say probably the only difference we do play football a little bit drier.
Okay.
Than we do soccer. Soccer, we almost keep it, with our maintenance practices and stuff, we can't get much over 25% moisture in the field just because of how well the field drains. Football, we'll let it dry a little bit. We'll try to play down, 15 to 20%, and then get us back in, get our moisture back right for soccer if it's the overnight or whatever. But
did you mention the soccer moisture? Where do you keep that at?
Soccer, we try to stay anywhere around 25% if we can. With our aeration and this and that, we don't get much above 25%. If we're holding water more than that, that shows us we do need to aerate or whatever. But
don't you also wet the leaf blade before the actual game?
We do. They like that. When we're ryegrass, pretty much strictly ryegrass, that stuff gets sticky when it's dry, and that ball really won't move. So if they passes the guy, it takes a little bit to get there. So you throw a little bit of water on there, and that ball it takes that friction out, and it'll just skip right across it. It makes the game a lot faster, and that's how our guys like. Yeah, it does. So.
Yeah, and you're totally right. Ryegrass particularly is sticky. It's got that real glossy underside, and it's sticky. You run your hand across it, and that's the way it feels. Interesting. What about lining the field? You've got two different sets of lines for soccer and football.
So our team likes to train in here the week of a home game. So they're normally in here, say like a Friday.
Okay.
So they'll train with football lines painted. We'll do theirs. Maybe we'll do soccer maybe in black for their training, just so it stands out for them. But then it's not too visible Friday night for football guys.
Right.
And then after the game on Friday night, there's probably 2 hours of stuff that we have to just break down from football and get soccer moved back in before we even do anything on the field.
You take care of the uprights and everything?
Yeah, we do the uprights. We do any field signage, bench areas. We tarp the sideline areas for football for the players to stand on, because they're actually on the soccer pitch.
Right.
So there's about 2 hours of stuff that we do, just not really field related,
right.
to get back to soccer. So we'll do that all Friday night, and then Saturday morning, and it's all weather pending. If weather's perfect, this is our schedule. Say we have a 7:00 kick Saturday night soccer, we'll come back in probably about 8:00 Friday morning, mow it, clean up any of the duff and whatnot that the football might have kicked up. We'll blow all that off. And then what we've done this year, it's a little bit different than we've done in the past. Earlier in the week, we'll go in and we'll put a coat of green colorant over the whole field.
Okay.
And kind of darken up the whole field a little bit. Maybe mask some of the lines that were there from the previous week.
Mm-hmm.
So Saturday we come in, and we always make sure we have a little bit of that tank mix left over. So we'll empty that out into some 5-gallon buckets.
Okay.
And then we will go Saturday morning and we'll paint just the football markings. So
you'll take your field line painter and with that paint in it, with that tank mix in it. Okay.
Yeah. So we have a wheel-to-wheel painter that we use for our lines. So we'll use that on the lines, and we'll put one coat of green over that. And then we've got we hand roll with paint rollers all of our hashes and numbers.
Well, I've done that before.
It's really quick. Everybody thinks it's slow, but after you get everything stenciled out that first time, and with our high school, we stencil everything out the first time. We'll pull strings and that, but then we're just able to go hand trace everything after that.
Yeah, it's fun. It's nice. It makes for a nice game day prep too.
Yeah, it's quick for us, because I can get 3 or 4 guys out there and they just knock it out. They knock out a whole field in an hour and a half.
Wow.
And so we'll go back in on Saturday morning. It's just hand roll green over all the numbers and hashes, and then at that point we do make our soccer lines a little bit extra brighter. So it will be 90-95% paint. We'll put just a little bit of water in there just to get it to roll.
Sure.
On the wheel to wheel.
Sure.
And that's worked out really well. You do see it during the day, like if the sun's shining, you will still see the football lines. Just right. It's kind of like a primer on a wall. It makes it just stands out. Even no matter how much green you put on it, you're still going to see the white.
Sure.
But as the sun goes down and the lights come on in the stadium at night, it hides, and it's worked out really well for us this year doing it.
That's great.
Spraying the whole field green early in the week, and then just doing lines, numbers, hashes on Saturdays. And so there's a lot of work that goes to it. You need, great weather. You need dry weather. 2 weeks ago, we had, what we do, Wednesday soccer, Thursday football, Saturday soccer.
Okay.
And it was supposed to rain the entire week, and I think we got 0.01 inches of rain. So we were a little stressed on how we were going to do all that week, but it actually worked out that we didn't get any rain. So
man. Yeah, you lucked out.
You definitely need dry weather for everything and we do use a temporary paint on our football lines.
Yes.
So if we do get some rain, it will wash. So it just
okay. Yeah. Well, that's the deal.
It is. I mean, it is what it is when we have football or soccer the same week.
Right. Yeah, that's what you got to do. You
mentioned
this.
They understand. Yeah.
Yeah, they get it. You mentioned this wheel-to-wheel painter. What is that?
Basically, a little tray of paint on it. It's got a wheel inside the tray, and it's got basically it looks like a little 3-wheeled machine, but the front wheel it's just a smooth wheel, and I'm gonna butcher this explanation. I've never had to ask me how to explain it, but basically it's got a wheel inside the paint tank, and then it's got a smaller wheel on top of that the wheel inside the paint picks up the paint, and then it transfers it to the smaller wheel, which the smaller wheel then transfers it to the wheel in front, and that transfers it to the grass.
Oh yeah, but that does make it easier, because then where you're rolling is actually the line, as opposed to lining up your wheels somewhere next to the field line.
And it's a 4-inch wide wheel, so you get a nice 4-inch wide line.
Sure.
And then we're also just painting the leaf. We're not spraying any paint down into the sand profile. You get some rain. We do see some, washed down into the sand profile, but we're just basically painting the leaf. And from afar, it looks solid.
Yeah, and it would make that transition from sport to sport a little bit easier because you can mow it out as well.
Yeah, it definitely helps us. So
that's cool, man.
So Google wheel-to-wheel painter. You'll see a picture. That'll give you a better explanation of what I just gave you.
No, just for everybody. I mean, we want to know, like, how's this actually work out there? So, Alan, you've been really forthright. I think this was an excellent interview. It was a lot of fun. Got to hear about really the inner workings of a Major League Soccer team, and beyond that, like a real asset to the whole community. It sounds like you guys host the high school games. There's got to be countless families and youth players that enjoy those facilities. And I think it's a really cool service that you do for everyone. We
love it.
Yeah, good. Well, yeah, thank you very much for getting on the podcast with us, and we really appreciate it. I hope you have a good rest of the week, buddy.
All right, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, you got it, man. Talk to you
later.
All right.